Today we're going to talk about the High Templar, a unit that can be the best unit in all of StarCraft if you know how to use it, or completely useless if you don't know what you're doing. A unit that, despite not having a basic attack, is one of the most damaging against enemy troops, and once it's depleted and seemingly useless, can transform into one of the most unstoppable beasts in the game. Today, in my mission to explain StarCraft to the world, we're taking a look at the highest of the Templars. We'll go over its stats, its abilities, and I'll teach you tricks to improve your control and usage of this unit, including some bugs and exploits like creating Archons at half the cost. I'll also teach you something essential for better unit control, the Magic Box, and we'll have a little trivia to test your knowledge. If that sounds interesting to you, stick around. And as always, feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already.
Like and subscribe.
Let's go.
High Templar, float slow, shuttle loaded, here we go. T-Hockey, ready to blow. Storm top right on the middle road. APM spike, clicking wild. Siege take siege, neatly piled. One blue flash, Terran child. Where's my army? It's gone bye. Storm crack, lightning rage. EMP's late, not your day. Macro stupid, GG page. Stormy boys, just clear the stage. Stormy boys, step back. Storm comes in where it hurts so bad. Stormy boys, flash try SCV, die. Stormy boys, just clear the stage. Stormy boys, step back.
Your thoughts.
Storm comes in where it hurts so bad. Stormy boys, flash try SCV, die. Seems like cooked in a psionic blast. Stormy boys, you ain't coming back. You ain't coming back.
But he's got some stormy boys in a shuttle. I had the storms in the shuttle.
You ain't coming back.
High Templar? What a unit. A key piece in your army composition, and without it, Protoss probably wouldn't stand a chance in competitive games. But what makes this Templar so important and powerful for the warriors of Ire? Let's break it down. Let's take a look at its stats. The High Templar is incredibly fragile, with only 40 HP and 40 shields, making it a prime target for enemy units. On top of that, it's very slow. With a movement speed of 2.4, it's common to see it trailing behind the main army, arriving last to battles and often left exposed to faster units like Mutalisks or Vultures, who can snipe them from better positions. In terms of resources, it only costs 50 minerals, but a significant 150 gas. It also takes up 2 supply and requires 31.5 seconds to warp in. It starts with 50 energy, which means it can't cast a storm right after warping in, and has a maximum of 200 energy. You can enhance this with an upgrade called the Kaidarin Amulet, which grants an additional 12 starting energy and increases the energy cap by 50. This upgrade is crucial as it allows a High Templar to cast up to 3 storms before running dry. You need a Templar Archives as a tech requirement to access them, and it's also where you'll find their upgrades. It's important to note that High Templars don't have a basic attack, which means they can't defend themselves on their own. So why is a unit that's so fragile, defenseless, and slow considered so powerful and essential? Aha! Now we're getting to the good part. The High Templar, just like its fellow spellcasters. By the way, I recommend you check out my video on Zerg spellcasters, where I fully explain the Queen and the Defiler. I'll leave it linked up here in the corner. Has several abilities that make it a force of nature. These are Psionic Storm, Hallucination, and Summon Archon. Let's take a look at each one. Psionic Storm. Undoubtedly, one of the best abilities in the entire game. The High Templar casts a storm of psionic energy with a maximum range of 9, affecting a 3x3 grid, and dealing up to 112 damage over 2.69 seconds. Since it's spell damage, units receive 100% of the damage, regardless of their armor or size. Check out the video linked above where I explain all the different damage types. However, because the damage is dealt over nearly 3 seconds, units can move, dodge, or run away from the storm before taking full damage. unless you're a siege tank in siege mode or a lurker. In that case, tough luck. This ability must be researched at the Templar archives, costing 200 minerals and 200 gas, a necessary investment to turn your Templars into one of the most devastating area damage units in the game. Whether you're using it offensively to engage enemy armies, defending your bases, or loading one into a shuttle to snipe enemy workers, the High Templar is a versatile unit that can be used in almost any scenario. But there are some important things to keep in mind with Psionic Storm. You have to be careful with this powerful ability, as it damages both enemy and allied units. So it's easy to lose some of your own zealots caught in the blast. The storm begins 0.33 seconds after being cast, meaning the damage isn't instant. Storms do not damage buildings, but they do damage units under a dark swarm. Each storm costs 75 energy, so a High Templar can't cast one immediately after warping in. When fully charged, it can cast a maximum of 3 storms, and something very, very important. Storm damage does not stack, so casting multiple storms on the same spot is a waste. That's why you need to learn a trick that every good StarCraft player should master: the Magic Box. Have you ever noticed that when you move your units, sometimes they stay in formation, and other times they stack on top of each other? The classic example is a group of 11 Mutalisks that stay in formation when you move them. But if you add a unit that's far away, the whole group clumps up into a tight stack when moving. This happens because of the Magic Box. The Magic Box refers to the area defined when selecting a group of units with your mouse, forming a square or rectangle that must not exceed 195 by 195 pixels. If all selected units fit within that area, they behave in a specific way that makes them maintain formation. That explanation might sound complicated, so let me break it down with an example. Take a look at this group of 3 High Templars and how they behave depending on their spacing. If I select all of them within the Magic Box, they'll maintain their formation when moving, meaning they'll keep the same distance from each other and won't clump together. But what happens if I add a 4th High Templar that just came out of my base, throw it into the same control group, and then try moving the group again? As you can see, now they behave differently and lose formation. That's because the 4th High Templar was outside the Magic Box when selected. This is especially useful when we want to cast storms and avoid them stacking on top of each other. So, to sum it up, you need to keep your High Templars within a specific boundary, without any extra units outside your Magic Box. That way, with a single click, your High Templars will cast their storms in formation, avoiding any overlap between them. This also applies to other units, like vultures. If you keep your vultures inside the Magic Box and order them to plant mines, they'll do so in formation. 5 vultures equals 5 mines. But if even 1 vulture is outside the box and you do the same, they'll all try to plant their mines in the same spot, which results in only 1 mine actually being placed. Be careful with the size of the box. With enough practice, you'll get a good feel for its limits. But if even one of your High Templars is just a single pixel outside the box, they'll lose formation. As a result, they'll cast their storms in the same spot, greatly reducing their effectiveness. And now, as in all our videos, it's time for our trivia question. It's well known that the defensive matrix from a science vessel creates a protective shield on a unit, absorbing up to 250 HP of damage. As mentioned earlier, a Psionic Storm deals 112 damage in total. So, if a Protoss unit has a defensive matrix and takes the full brunt of a storm, what happens? A. Receives 0 damage. The matrix absorbs the entire storm. B. Receives full damage. The matrix doesn't protect against storms. C. The unit takes some damage to its shields. D. The unit takes some damage to its HP. Leave your answer down in the comments. The correct answer will be revealed later in the video. Second ability, Hallucination. The High Templar creates two exact copies of a target unit. These copies move and behave just like the original unit, but they can't cast abilities. Their attacks deal 0 damage, and they take double damage from attacks. These hallucinations have a maximum lifespan of 56.7 seconds. And while the owner sees them with a bluish tint, the enemy sees them as completely identical to real units. Hallucinations also have the same HP and shield values as the original units, and can even be repaired, healed, or have their shields recharged by a shield battery. Hallucinations are dispelled by most spells. This means that when they are targeted by any ability, whether from allies or enemies, they disappear in a puff of blue smoke. Hallucinations cannot be targeted by a Dark Archon's feedback, even if the copied unit normally has energy. And while Spawn Broodling does destroy a hallucination, it doesn't spawn the 2 broodlings it normally would. A High Templar can't cast Hallucination on itself, but it can hallucinate another hallucination. Hallucinations can't activate basic abilities, like Siege Mode on a tank, Burrow on a lurker, or build Scarabs on a Reaver. In the case of Reavers, the hallucinated copy will have the same number of Scarabs as the original target. So if you hallucinate a Reaver with no Scarabs in it, it will not attack. But if you hallucinate a Reaver with 8 Scarabs in it, it will attack up to 8 times. It's also important to note that there's no way to make a hallucination invisible. They will always remain visible, even under an Arbiter's cloak field, and hallucinated Dark Templars will always be visible to the opponent. Hallucination is a complex ability, and like all complex abilities, it comes with some bugs we can take advantage of. While it's true that hallucinated units can't activate abilities, there's a specific interaction that allows a hallucinated queen to infect a command center. Even though the hallucinated queen doesn't have access to its spell kit, the game is programmed so that if a queen approaches a damaged command center, it will automatically infect it. But to trigger this, we need to issue an attack command. So all we have to do is add our hallucinated queen to a control group with other units that use the attack command, then send the group to attack the command center, and the hallucinated queen will infect it. But there's an exploit that can actually give us a real economic advantage, and that's creating Archons at half the cost. How does it work? As I mentioned before, hallucinated units don't display their ability kits. But just like what happens with the Queen, those abilities are still present in the unit's code, even if they don't appear on screen. If I take 2 hallucinated High Templars, they won't show the option to merge into an Archon. The same goes for combining 1 real High Templar and 1 hallucinated. You won't see the merge option. And here's where our dear friend High Latency comes to the rescue. First, you need to know that there's a way to add units to control groups using the Shift command. For example, let's say I have a control group on key 1 with 2 High Templars, and I want to add a 3rd. I simply select the 3rd Templar and press Shift +1. Now when I press 1, that 3rd High Templar is included in the group. Still with me so far? Now, in a game with relatively high latency, like in Ranked Ladder, every action takes a slight, almost unnoticeable delay to execute. This means we can perform a second action before the first one is fully processed and displayed on screen. And this is how we can create Archons at half price. Let me explain the step-by-step. First, we create hallucinations of a High Templar. We separate them and place them next to a real High Templar. We then assign our real High Templars to control Group 1. Now, with the fastest speed your hands can manage, and taking advantage of high latency, we select both hallucinations, add them to control Group 1 using Shift +1, and immediately press 1 to jump back to our control group. So what happens here? Because of the high latency, the hallucinations were added to control Group 1, but they didn't have time to appear on screen due to how fast we switched back. Now, on screen, it looks like we only have the 2 real High Templars in our group. But in reality, Control Group 1 contains both the real Templars and the hallucinations. Then, when we use the Merge into Archon command, the High Templars will attempt to merge with the closest available unit, which includes the hallucinations. This means we end up creating Archons using only 1 real High Templar. But if we look closely, there's a problem. These Archons are hallucinations, so once their time runs out, they'll disappear, and we'll have lost our real High Templars. But there is a way to fix this. After creating the hallucinations, we need to merge them into Archons using 2 new High Templars, or use the same High Templars, but only after loading them into a shuttle and unloading them. Why does this work? I have no idea. If someone knows, let us know in the comments. If we do the trick this way, we'll end up with real Archons at half the cost. And now the third ability. Though we've already talked about it, 2 High Templars can merge into an Archon, an incredibly powerful unit that has friendly splash damage, meaning that unlike units like siege tanks or spider mines, whose splash can also hurt allies, the Archon's splash only affects enemy units. This makes it a great unit for countering Zerg swarms under Dark Swarm, or stacked groups of Mutalisks. Okay, but what happened to our trivia question? What happens when a Protoss unit with a defensive matrix gets hit by a Psionic Storm? If your answer was D, congratulations. Units that take the full duration of a Psionic Storm under the protection of a defensive matrix always receive 4 points of damage, and that damage goes directly to their hit points. So even though you might think the Protoss' shield would absorb the hit first, that's not the case. The Storm bypasses the shield and damages the unit's HP directly. For example, a Dragoon with less than 4 HP, even with a full shield and a defensive matrix, will still be destroyed by the Storm. And there you have it, the best explanation I could give you about the High Templar. If you know any other tricks or interactions I might have missed, drop them in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like if you haven't already. Before I go, I'll leave you this video where we talk about some of the most disturbing facts in the StarCraft lore. It's been a pleasure having you here. See you in the next one.
Give a damn, click alone, tanks go blam. You're crying harder than a toastest man. Ghost formed up, they can't land. Storm ranks up off the sand. Med neurals gone, supplies in red. All dressed in
All right! He's better than me! It's clear!